Have you ever thought of why you still have the most random, meaningless, and odd memories from your childhood? You remember sitting eating McDonald's at the mall that one random time when you were 7, but you don't even remember buying your favorite toy ever that same day. You remember that one drive to the beach when you were 10, but you don't even remember where you went until you think about it? There has to be a reason your mind decides to keep these so thought to be insignificant memories, and not the thought to be significant ones, right? Or in my case, you remember that one homeless man with a bump on his head sitting outside of the ballpark, but don't even remember whose autograph you got at the game. Well, here's that story. Back in 4th grade, I took a lovely family trip to the nothing special city of Baltimore. My parents, brother, and I planned the trip around a Phillies vs. Orioles game at Camden Yards. Our hotel was conveniently within walking distance of the ballpark, so we walked there. I probably convinced my parents to buy me a hot dog, soda, obviously cotton candy, and then probably a Phillies bobblehead or something of the sort. I even got one of the players' autographs before the game. We had pretty decent seats right behind one of the dugouts. The Phillies ended up winning, I think. It was a close, low-scoring game, something like 3-1 or something. So 9 years later, I'm sitting here, and I don't remember whose autograph I got, or who pitched, or even what the score was. But I do remember one thing in great detail. Something from before I even entered the ballpark. Something I saw walking to the stadium. There were thousands of people, all walking in a herd, heading to the game. Through the gaps in the crowd, I remember seeing a bunch of tall buildings, and a homeless person here or there against the buildings. And as I got in sight of the stadium, probably about 200 yards to the front gate, I passed a light post in the middle of the open sidewalk, right in front of the stadium. There was an African American homeless man sitting Indian style against that light post, with a can in front of him. The man's eyes were closed and his head was slightly tilted down, and for this reason I was able to clearly see the large protruding bump on his bald head. It almost looked like a large golf ball sticking halfway out of his head. Being an immature 4th grader, this was very abnormal and kind of scary in a way to me. But why did I remember the man with a bump on his head so vividly, and not any of the other countless homeless men I saw? There were others who were African American, others who were begging for money, others who were visibly struggling, and others who appeared to be sleeping. But there weren't any others with a bump, an abnormality in the bunch. Something I hadn't seen before and was foreign to me. So by only remembering him and being kind of scared, I was judging him, right? It reminds me of my mom's cousins, who we always used to see at my aunt's house when I was younger. He had a very large beard, a lot of facial hair, long hair, and my brother was scared of him. My mother always used to tell him that he was a nice man, that he's not scary at all, but it did not change my brother's opinion. The look was enough. I know for sure if I asked my brother about him today, he would vividly remember what he looked like. These two examples could lend an insight into the judgments that go on every day based on one's look. Or maybe it could lend an insight on how I view my own life. When I walked by that man, the struggle in his figure was very visible and was tough to see. As a 10-year-old kid, I had a pretty easy life. My biggest worries were winning a basketball game at recess, or whether the girl I had a crush on liked me back, even though I would never say anything to her beyond, hi. I may not have known it at the time, but the struggle I saw in this man may have matured my meaning of worries as a 4th grader. It's hard to think what worries could really be when you live in a normal-sized suburban house with two loving parents that make you every meal. And while I go sit in that ballpark, enjoy a nice Phillies game, go back to my hotel, back to my normal life in Warrington, Pennsylvania the next day, that man with the bump on his head is probably still struggling. He was probably out there in front of that same post that next night, still begging for money and struggling to survive in the streets without a roof over his head and loving parents that feed him every meal. When I see or hear of someone struggling, just like most humans, I feel bad. Sometimes I donate money to a charity or drop $1 in a jar to try to help those who are struggling. Sometimes I plan and direct a whole 3-on-3 basketball tournament to raise money for those who are struggling. Sometimes I even attend a 46-hour dance marathon and spend all year raising money to help those who are struggling. But these things only happen sometimes. Most of the time, I'm not doing any of these things. And the millions of people, such as the man with the bump on his head, are still out there struggling while I live my sometimes thought to be tough life. So had this experience helped shape my character and view on judging others? After thinking about it while telling this story, definitely. Is it the reason my brain decided to store this memory away in my mind? Who knows, the mind does some weird things. So next time that random 10-year-old memory passes through your mind, Think about the kind of meaning it could have. Maybe it's just another random, useless memory. Or maybe it's something that could be pretty damn significant.